"Sir, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to touch it." The little boy's voice trembled like a leaf caught in the wind. His small hand froze in the air, hovering just above the glossy black surface of the car, a car that gleamed like a mirror under the afternoon sun. He looked up, his wide brown eyes full of fear and confusion. He couldn't have been more than 7. His shirt slightly faded, his shoes scuffed, his face innocent and pure. Across from him stood Alexander Gray, a man whose name made headlines, whose fortune could buy entire city blocks. The billionaire in his perfectly tailored charcoal suit, silver watch gleaming under his cuff, looked at the boy as though he were something unwelcome, a stain on perfection. What are you doing?" Alexander's voice sliced through the calm street like a blade. The boy flinched, stepping back. "I was just looking, sir. It's so shiny. I never saw a car like that before." Alexander's jaw tightened. The city's golden boy, known for his towering business empire and ice-cold demeanor, didn't tolerate anyone near his prized possessions, especially not his Aston Martin valor, his latest obsession. "You think this is some kind of playground?" Alexander snapped. "Do you have any idea how much this car costs?" The boy blinked, swallowing hard. "No, sir. I'm sorry. I didn't mean no harm." "You've already left a mark on it," Alexander barked, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket, rubbing the car's hood as if the child's touch had infected it. His movements were harsh, mechanical, his voice echoing with something deeper than anger. Maybe exhaustion, maybe emptiness. People nearby stopped to look. A few whispered. A woman shook her head, and the little boy's lower lip trembled as he whispered, "I was just curious. My mom says rich people have magic in their cars. I wanted to see what it feels like." The street went silent. Even Alexander hesitated just a fraction of a second. Before regaining his composure, he sighed coldly. "Tell your mother to teach you respect, not fairy tales." The boy's face fell. His eyes glistened. "Yes, sir." He turned and began to walk away, small, defeated, dragging his feet along the concrete. But fate has a strange sense of timing. Just as the boy reached the corner, a familiar voice, soft yet firm, echoed through the air. "Ethan!" The boy looked up. A woman in a faded nurse's uniform came running toward him. Amara Brooks, early 30s, strong yet gentle, her presence radiating quiet strength. Sweat glistened on her forehead from a long hospital shift, her hair tied back neatly, her badge still pinned to her chest. She knelt beside her son, brushing his cheek tenderly. "What happened, baby?" Before Ethan could answer, Alexander's sharp tone cut through again. "He touched my car. He should learn to keep his hands to himself." Amara's expression shifted. She looked up at the man towering over them, a man she recognized, though he didn't recognize her. Her eyes flickered for a moment with something unspoken. "I'm sorry, sir," she said calmly. "He didn't mean to offend you." "Then maybe teach him to stay away from things he can't afford," Alexander said, his words crisp, almost rehearsed. For a long moment, the air hung heavy between them. Ethan looked between them, the man who had everything and the mother who had nothing but her dignity. "I said I was sorry," the boy murmured again, barely audible. Alexander didn't reply. He simply stepped into his car, the engine roaring to life. As he pulled away, his tinted window reflected the image of the woman and her son, standing quietly side by side, framed by the dust of his departure. That night, the city glimmered with its usual rhythm, laughter spilling from rooftop bars, headlights weaving through the rain. Alexander sat alone in his penthouse, glass of whiskey in hand, overlooking the skyline. Yet the image of the boy's eyes kept replaying in his mind. He told himself it didn't matter. Just another kid, just another day. But something about that innocence, that trembling voice saying, "My mom says rich people have magic in their cars," refused to fade. He poured another drink, shaking it off. He had more important things to think about: a corporate deal, a gala, a life so full of success it left no room for humility. But even success couldn't fill silence, and that night the silence was deafening. The next morning, Alexander's assistant entered his office. "Sir, you have a meeting at 10, and the hospital board called again about the charity donation approval." "Postpone it," Alexander muttered, flipping through his tablet. "It's about the St. Clair Memorial Hospital," she added. "They said they're naming the new blood wing after you." Alexander gave a faint smirk. "Good. Maybe it'll make me look human for once." She hesitated. "They also mentioned the nurse who started that program wanted to meet you personally, said it was important." He frowned. "A nurse? Why?" "She said something about gratitude." "Fine," he said. "Set it up. 5 minutes, no more." He didn't know then that this meeting, this ordinary appointment, would change everything he thought he knew about his life. That evening, in the same hospital where Amara worked tirelessly through the night, she checked her schedule. Another double shift. Ethan sat quietly in the break room corner with a coloring book, waiting for her to finish. "Baby, you hungry?" she asked, brushing his hair gently. He shook his head. "Mom, that man was really mad today." Amara sighed softly. "Some people forget what kindness feels like, sweetheart, but we don't stop being kind because of them." Ethan nodded. "You think he's sad?" She paused, looking toward the window where the city lights shimmered like stars. "Maybe," she said quietly. "People with everything often hide the deepest sadness." The door opened. A nurse peeked in. "Amara, Dr. Keene needs you in the ICU." "On my way," she said, giving Ethan a smile. "Stay here, baby. Don't go wandering, okay?" "Okay, Mama." As she left, the boy looked down at his drawing, a picture of a big, shiny car with a smiling man and a little boy shaking hands. He didn't know yet that the same man would walk through those hospital doors within the week, not as a visitor, but as someone whose life had once been saved by the very woman he had insulted. The story of that car, that boy, and that mother had only just begun. And somewhere deep inside Alexander Gray's heart, behind the steel walls of pride, a crack had formed, small, invisible, but enough to let the light in. The sky was grey that morning, the kind of grey that made the city look cold and distant. Alexander Gray's car glided through the streets, its polished surface catching the faint drizzle that had begun to fall. He was late for his meeting at St. Clair Memorial Hospital, the one he'd almost cancelled 3 times. He didn't like hospitals. The sterile smell, the quiet hum of machines, the reminder of fragility, it all made him uncomfortable. But he went because it was good for his reputation. The billionaire with a heart. That was what the headline said after his accident 3 years ago, when he'd nearly died on the highway, and then miraculously recovered. No one knew how close he had come to never waking up again. He adjusted his cufflinks, his expression unreadable as his driver parked. The automatic doors of the hospital slid open, letting in the faint scent of antiseptic and rain. A nurse guided him to a small conference room. He glanced around impatiently. "Let's get this over with." Moments later, the door opened again, and in stepped Amara Brooks. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw him, but she quickly composed herself. She looked tired, her uniform freshly laundered but worn, her hair neatly tied back. Still, there was a quiet grace about her, the kind that didn't need wealth to command respect. Alexander didn't recognize her immediately. He just saw another nurse, another face in the background of his busy life. "Mr. Gray," she said calmly, offering her hand. "Thank you for coming." He shook it briefly. "Of course, I hear you wanted to meet me about the blood program." "Yes," she said, folding her hands together. "I wanted to thank you for your donations. They've helped save dozens of lives. But there's something else." He arched a brow. "Go on." Amara hesitated. 3 years ago you were brought into this hospital after a car accident. You'd lost a lot of blood. We didn't think you'd make it. Alexander's expression hardened. I'm aware. The doctors told me. What they didn't tell you, Amara continued softly, was whose blood you received. For a moment silence filled the room, only the soft hum of the air conditioner. Alexander frowned, unsure where she was going with this. My blood, she said quietly. I was the donor. His eyes lifted slowly to meet hers. You? She nodded, her voice calm but steady. It was a match. They called me in from another floor that night. I didn't even know who it was for, just that someone needed it immediately. I didn't ask questions. That's not what saving a life is about. He blinked, the words landing heavier than he expected. He searched her face for any sign of deceit, but all he found was quiet truth. You're saying, I'm alive because of you, he said slowly. She smiled faintly. Because of a lot of people, but yes, I was one of them. He leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight, his eyes unfocused. A wave of something unrecognizable washed over him. Not anger, not embarrassment, something deeper. Humility. For the first time in years, he felt small. He looked at her again, really looked, and suddenly the image of that little boy, the same brown eyes, the same trembling voice, flashed in his mind. Wait, he said slowly. You're the woman from the street, the boy who touched your car, she finished softly. Yes, that was my son. Alexander's breath caught. His mind flooded with the memory of that moment, the anger, the cold words, the look on the boy's face. And now, sitting in front of him, was the mother of that child, the woman whose blood had once kept him alive. He felt something inside him twist painfully. I didn't know, he muttered. I know, Amara replied gently. People rarely do. She turned slightly, her voice steady but laced with emotion. When I saw you yell at my son, I wanted to be angry, but then I remembered. I once helped save your life without even knowing your name, so I told myself maybe one day life would find a way to remind you what kindness feels like. Alexander stared at her, speechless. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with the weight of realization. For the first time, his carefully built world, the world of power, control, and image, felt paper-thin. He lowered his eyes, his voice quieter than before. I was wrong. I shouldn't have spoken to him like that. Amara gave a small, understanding smile. We all forget ourselves sometimes. What matters is what we do after we remember. He looked up, his gaze softer now. May I apologize to him? You can try, she said. He's a forgiving boy. That evening, Alexander waited near the hospital garden. The rain had stopped, and the sky had turned a deep orange. Ethan sat on a bench, swinging his legs, drawing in his sketchbook again. Alexander approached slowly. Hey, Ethan. The boy looked up, startled. You're the car man. Alexander couldn't help but chuckle. Yes, the car man. I wanted to say I'm sorry. The boy blinked. For yelling? Yes, for yelling, and for not listening. Ethan tilted his head, studying him with curious eyes. My mom says everyone can be nice if they try. Alexander smiled faintly. Your mom is a very wise woman. She's the best, Ethan said proudly. She helps people all the time, even when she's tired. I know, Alexander said softly. She helped me once too. The boy looked confused. Really? Yes, Alexander nodded. She gave me something when I needed it most. Ethan grinned. That's what she does. Alexander felt a lump form in his throat. I owe her everything, he murmured. And you? The boy shrugged shyly. It's okay. You were just mad. Grown-ups get mad a lot." Alexander knelt down so he was eye level with him. "You're a good kid, Ethan. I should have treated you better. Can I make it up to you?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Can I ride in your car?" Alexander laughed softly, the first real laugh in a long time. "I think that can be arranged." That night, as the city lights flickered and the car engine purred quietly down the street, Amara watched from the hospital window as her son sat in the passenger seat of the very car that once made him feel small, now smiling, laughing, free. And Alexander, he didn't see the car as a trophy anymore. For the first time, he saw it for what it truly was, just metal and paint. What mattered sat beside him, innocence, forgiveness, and the reflection of the woman who once saved his life. But fate had one more turn left for them, something that would test how far Alexander had truly come, because sometimes the lesson isn't complete until life gives you a second chance to prove it. A week passed since that afternoon at the hospital. The days rolled quietly, yet something inside Alexander Gray had shifted, deeply, permanently. He found himself looking at people differently, at his reflection differently. For years he had been surrounded by success, luxury, and applause, yet none of it had ever filled him the way a single act of forgiveness from a 7-year-old boy had. He still remembered Ethan's laughter in the car, that pure, unguarded joy. It had reached a part of him he didn't know still existed, and Amara. Her calm strength haunted him in the gentlest way. She hadn't lectured, hadn't sought recognition. She had simply done what was right, without bitterness or pride. That night, Alexander sat in his office, staring at the skyline, papers untouched, his phone silent. The city lights looked different now, not like trophies, but like lives, each one a story he never saw. He thought about the boy who touched his car, the woman who saved his life, and the man he had been, cold, distant, proud. He whispered to himself, "You can buy everything, except peace." The next morning, Alexander arrived at St. Clair Hospital unannounced. The staff stared, surprised. Billionaires didn't just walk in without a PR team. But this time, he wasn't there for cameras. He asked for Amara. She was in the pediatric ward, reading a story to a small group of children. Her laughter filled the room like sunlight through a window. When she noticed him, she looked momentarily startled, but smiled politely. "Mr. Gray," she said, setting the book aside. "Did you get lost in the children's wing?" He chuckled softly. "Maybe I did, or maybe I came to find something I lost." The children giggled, whispering. Amara gave him a curious look. "Can I help you with something?" Alexander took a breath. "I came to return a favor." She frowned slightly. "A favor?" He nodded. "You saved my life once, and you've been saving lives every day since. But who saves you when you're tired, when things get hard?" Amara hesitated. "I don't do it for reward, Mr. Gray." "I know," he said gently. "That's what makes it so powerful." He turned slightly to the head nurse nearby. "I'd like to make a donation." The head nurse blinked. "Of course, sir. We can arrange that through—" "No," Alexander interrupted. "Not just money. A foundation. For single mothers working in healthcare, scholarships for their children, daycare support, housing if they need it." Amara's eyes widened. "Mr. Gray," he smiled faintly, "call it the Brooks Foundation, after the woman who reminded me what humanity looks like." Her hand trembled slightly. "You don't have to." "I want to," he said quietly. "Because when I was bleeding on that table 3 years ago, you gave me life. Now I want to give others a chance at theirs." Amara's eyes glistened. She turned away briefly, blinking back tears. Ethan tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, what's happening?" She knelt beside him. "Something good, baby." Alexander crouched down to Ethan's level again. "Hey, Carman again?" The boy grinned. Alexander chuckled. "Yeah, but I think I like friend better." Ethan smiled wide. "Me too." Weeks passed. The Brooks Foundation launched quietly. No press conference, no photographers, just action. Grants were approved. Nurses received help. Mothers found stability. And in the corner of every plaque, beneath the gold letters, one small line was engraved. Inspired by kindness that asked for nothing in return. Alexander began visiting the hospital often, not for meetings, but for meaning. Sometimes he'd read stories to the kids with Amara. Other times he'd sit silently watching life go on, the hum of nurses, the laughter in the halls, the scent of coffee and antiseptic. One afternoon he found Amara standing outside in the courtyard, watching the sunset. "You still work too much?" he teased. She smiled. "Some habits are hard to break." He stood beside her. The air was soft, golden. "I used to think I was alive because I survived that crash," he said quietly. "But now I know. I didn't start living until I met you and Ethan." Amara turned, her eyes gentle. "You saved yourself, Mr. Gray. You just needed a reminder." He smiled faintly. "Alexander," he corrected softly. "Just Alexander." She laughed lightly. "Just Amara, then." They stood in silence as the sun dipped below the skyline, and for the first time Alexander felt peace. Not the kind that comes from wealth or applause, but the kind that comes from grace. Sometimes the greatest wealth isn't measured in what we own, but in the hearts we touch. Alexander Gray once thought success meant never needing anyone, but the truth, it was a stranger's kindness, a nurse's quiet courage, that gave him back his life. The boy's touch on that car wasn't a stain, it was a spark, a reminder that compassion can reach where pride cannot. And maybe, in our busy lives, we all need that reminder, that one small act of kindness, one moment of understanding, can change the course of someone's world. So next time you're rushing through your day and someone crosses your path, pause, smile, help, listen, because you never know whose life you might be saving, or how deeply they might save yours in return. Alexander helping at hospital, Ethan waving, Amara smiling at the foundation's plaque. This was the story of a billionaire who found his heart again, and maybe, just maybe, it's a reminder that kindness always finds its way back. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel, Black Saga, drop a comment and tell us which scene or character moved you the most and where you're watching from. Share this with someone who needs to believe that kindness still exists.